The intuition, so I would say that the way I'd phrase it is that I had a very strong belief that bigger is better. And that one of the goals that we had at OpenAI is to figure out how to use the scale correctly. There was a lot of belief in OpenAI about scale from the very beginning. The question is, what to use it for precisely? Because I'll mention, right now we're talking about the GPTs, but there's another very important line of work which I haven't mentioned, the second big idea. But I think now is a good time to make a detour, and that's reinforcement learning. That clearly seems important as well. What do you do with it? So the first really big project that was done inside OpenAI was our effort at solving a real-time strategy game. And for context, a real-time strategy game is like, it's a competitive sport.
Yeah, right.
Where you need to be smart, you need to have you need to have a quick reaction time, there's teamwork, and you're competing against another team. And it's pretty involved. And there is a whole competitive league for that game. The game is called Dota 2. And so we train a reinforcement learning agent to play against itself, to produce, with the goal of reaching a level so that it could compete against the best players in the world. And that was a major undertaking as well. It was a very different line. It was reinforcement learning.
Yeah, I remember the day that you guys announced that work. And this is by the way, when I was asking earlier about there's a large body of work that have come out of OpenAI. Some of it seemed like detours, but in fact, as you're explaining now, they might have been detours. It's seemingly detours, but they really led up to some of the important work that we're now talking about, ChatGPT.
Yeah, I mean, there has been real convergence where the GPTs produce the foundation, and then the reinforcement learning from Dota morphed into reinforcement learning from human feedback.
That's right.
And that combination gave us ChatGPT.
You know, there's a misunderstanding that ChatGPT is in itself just one giant large language model. There's a system around it that's fairly complicated. Could you explain briefly for the audience the fine tuning of it, the reinforcement learning of it, the various surrounding systems that allows you to keep it on rails and let it give it knowledge and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I can. So the way to think about it is that when we train a large neural network to accurately predict the next word in lots of different texts from the internet, what we are doing is that we are learning a world model. It looks like we are learning this. It may look on the surface that we are just learning statistical correlations in text. But it turns out that to just learn the statistical correlations in text, to compress them really well, what the neural network learns is some representation of the process that produced the text. This text is actually a projection of the world. There is a world out there, and it has a projection on this text. And so what the neural network is learning is more and more aspects of the world, of people, of the human conditions, their hopes, dreams, and motivations, their interactions, and the situations that we are in. And the neural network learns a compressed, abstract, usable representation of that. This is what's being learned from accurately predicting the next word. And furthermore, the more accurate you are at predicting the next word, the higher of a fidelity, the more resolution you get in this process. So that's what the pre-training stage does. But what this does not do is specify the desired behavior that we wish our neural network to exhibit. You see, a language model, what it really tries to do is to answer the following question. If I had some random piece of text on the internet which starts with some prefix, some prompt, what will it complete to? if you just randomly ended up on some text from the internet. But this is different from, well, I want to have an assistant which will be truthful, that will be helpful, that will follow certain rules and not violate them. That requires additional training. This is where the fine-tuning and the reinforcement learning from human teachers and other forms of AI assistance. It's not just reinforcement learning from human teachers. It's also reinforcement learning from human and AI collaboration. Our teachers are working together with an AI to teach our AI to behave. But here we are not teaching it new knowledge. This is not what's happening. We are teaching it. We are communicating with it. We are communicating to it what it is that we want it to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this process, the second stage, is also extremely important. The better we do the second stage, the more useful, the more reliable this neural network will be. So the second stage is extremely important too, in addition to the first stage of the learn everything. Learn as much as you can about the world from the projection of the world, which is text.
Now you could fine tune it. You could instruct it to perform certain things. Can you instruct it to not perform certain things so that you could give it guardrails about avoid these type of behavior? Give it some kind of a bounding box so that it doesn't wander out of that bounding box and perform things that are,
Yes.
unsafe or otherwise.
Yeah. So this second stage of training is indeed where we communicate to the neural network anything we want, which includes the bounding box.
Mm-hmm.
And the better we do this training, the higher the fidelity with which we communicate this bounding box. And so with constant research and innovation on improving this fidelity, we improve this fidelity, and so it becomes more and more reliable and precise in the way in which it follows the intended instructions.
ChatGPT came out just a few months ago. Fastest growing application in the history of humanity. Lots of interpretations about why, but some of the things that is clear. It is the easiest application that anyone has ever created for anyone to use. It performs tasks. It performs things. It does things that are beyond people's expectation. Anyone can use it. There are no instruction sets. There are no wrong ways to use it. You just use it. And if your instructions prompts are ambiguous, the conversation refines the ambiguity until your intents are understood by the application, by the AI. The impact, of course, clearly remarkable. Now, yesterday, this is the day after GPT-4, just a few months later. The performance of GPT-4 in many areas astounding. SAT scores, GRE scores, bar exams, the number of tests that it's able to perform at very capable levels, very capable human levels, astounding. What were the major differences between ChatGPT and GPT-4 that led to its improvements in these areas?
So GPT-4 is a pretty substantial improvement on top of ChatGPT across very many dimensions. We trained GPT-4, I would say, between more than 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago, I don't remember exactly. GPT, the first big difference between ChatGPT and GPT-4, and that perhaps is the most important difference, is that the base on top of GPT-4 is built predicts the next word with greater accuracy. This is really important because the better a neural network can predict the next word in text, the more it understands it. This claim is now perhaps accepted by many at this point, but it might still not be intuitive or not completely intuitive as to why that is. So I'd like to take a small detour and to give an analogy that will hopefully clarify why more accurate prediction of the next word leads to more understanding, real understanding. Let's consider an example. Say you read a detective novel. It's like a complicated plot, a storyline, different characters, lots of events, mysteries like clues, it's unclear. Then, let's say that at the last page of the book, the detective has gathered all the clues, gathered all the people, and saying, okay, I'm going to reveal the identity of whoever committed the crime. And that person's name is...
Predict that word.
Predict that word,
Yeah,
exactly.
my goodness.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Now, there are many different words, but by predicting those words better and better and better, the understanding of the text keeps on increasing. GPT-4 predicts the next word better.
Ilya, people say that deep learning won't lead to reasoning. That deep learning won't lead to reasoning. But in order to predict that next word, figure out from all of the agents that were there and all of their, strengths or weaknesses or their intentions and the context, and to be able to predict that word, who was the murderer, that requires some amount of reasoning, a fair amount of reasoning. And so how is it that it's able to learn reasoning, and if it learned reasoning, one of the things that I was going to ask you is, of all the tests that were taken between ChatGPT and GPT-4, there were some tests that GPT-3 or ChatGPT was already very good at. There were some tests that GPT-3 or ChatGPT was not as good at, that GPT-4 was much better at. And there were some tests that neither are good at yet. I would love for it, and some of it has to do with reasoning, it seems. That, maybe in calculus that it wasn't able to break maybe the problem down into its reasonable steps and solve it. But yet in some areas it seems to demonstrate reasoning skills. And so is that an area that in predicting the next word you're learning reasoning? And what are the limitations now of GPT-4 that would enhance its ability to reason even further?
Reasoning isn't this super well-defined concept, but we can try to define it anyway, which is when you maybe when you go further, where you're able to somehow think about it a little bit and get a better answer because of your reasoning. And I'd say that our neural nets, maybe there is some kind of limitation which could be addressed by, for example, asking the neural network to think out loud. This has proven to be extremely effective for reasoning. But I think it also remains to be seen just how far the basic neural network will go. I think we have yet to fully tap out its potential. But yeah, there is definitely some sense where reasoning is still not quite at that level as some of the other capabilities of the neural network, though we would like the reasoning capabilities of the neural network to be higher. I think that it's fairly likely that business as usual will improve the reasoning capabilities of the neural network. I wouldn't necessarily confidently rule out this possibility.
Yeah, because one of the things that is really cool is you ask ChatGPT a question, but before it answers the question, tell me first of what you know, and then to answer the question. Usually when somebody answers a question, if you give me the foundational knowledge that you have or the foundational assumptions that you're making before you answer the question, that really improves my believability of the answer. You're also demonstrating some level of reason. Well, you're demonstrating reasoning. And so it seems to me that ChatGPT has this inherent capability embedded in it. Yeah.
To some degree.
Yeah.
One way to think about what's happening now is that these neural networks have a lot of these capabilities. They're just not quite very reliable. In fact, you could say that reliability is currently the single biggest obstacle for these neural networks being useful truly useful if sometimes it is still the case that these neural networks hallucinate a little bit, or maybe make some mistakes which are unexpected, which you wouldn't expect a person to make. It is this kind of unreliability that makes them substantially less useful. But I think that perhaps with a little bit more research, with the current ideas that we have, and perhaps a few more of the ambitious research plans, we'll be able to achieve higher reliability as well. And that will be truly useful. That will allow us to have very accurate guardrails, which are very precise.
That's right.
And it will make it ask for clarification where it's unsure, or maybe say that it doesn't know something when it indeed doesn't know, and do so extremely reliably. So I'd say that these are some of the bottlenecks, really. So it's not about whether it exhibits some particular capability, but more how reliably.
To the degree
exactly.
Of it. Yeah. You know, one is speaking of factualness and factfulness, hallucination. I saw in one of the videos a demonstration that links to a Wikipedia page. Does retrieval capability has that been included in the GPT-4? Is it able to retrieve information from a factful place that could augment its response to you?
So the current GPT-4, as released, does not have a built-in retrieval capability. It is just a really, really good next word predictor, which can also consume images, by the way. We haven't spoken about it, but
I'm about to ask you about multimodality.
It is really good at images, which is also then fine-tuned with data and various reinforcement learning variants to behave in a particular way. It is perhaps, I'm sure someone will, it wouldn't surprise me if some of the people who have access could perhaps request GPT-4 to maybe make some queries and then populate the results inside the context. Because also the context duration of GPT-4 is quite a bit longer now.
Yeah, that's right.
So, in short, although GPT-4 does not support built-in retrieval, it is completely correct that it will get better with retrieval.